Welcome everybody to the session today. My name is Melissa Jurkoic. As if you were already here, you heard that I'm based in New Hampshire in the northeast of the United States. So welcome from wherever time zone or country you're coming from today to join us. I'm excited to be here with the AI Native Workplace Summit today. And today we're going to talk about AI proficiency and real business value. That's the focus there. The COO of Benson Consulting, based here in New Hampshire, where we really are focused around helping people get true value out of their technology investments and moving the needle on adoption. So it won't be a surprise that I'm going to focus a lot around adoption today, and specifically around all technology inclusive of AI and how you get actual business value from individuals. So to kick us off, for those of you that have joined us here, I do have one quick question that I'd love if you could take a screenshot or use your phone to just enter this Slido, because everyone comes to us from different places, not only in the world, but different places in their journey. And so I'd love to understand, if you would humor me for a minute, where are you coming from? Like, what sort of stage of your technology journey are you at right now? Are you just starting in terms of AI? You're not even sure. Are you deep into it right now and you really want to level up and you want to understand what proficiency means? Are you just exploring some practical strategies? So if I'll just give you guys like 30 seconds because I know we're running short on time, and no worries if we don't see where everyone is. I imagine that we're probably all over the map. What I've seen pretty typically when I've been talking to audiences lately is that there's quite a mix between people that are already engaged with some level of AI adoption and they just want to understand what's next. And next looks so different right now. This technology has moved faster than any technology I've seen in my career, and I've been a technologist now for 25 years. So I come to you with a lot of experience across a lot of different technologies, and dating all the way back to the dot-com boom. And I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like this. The pace of change is extremely rapid, and we as humans are challenged by how to incorporate that and what that means, what the change management aspect of that is. How do we incorporate it into our everyday lives? And then how do we use it practically? So I see people all over the map. So just imagine that this would be evenly spread. So I want to talk to you about why that is today, and also how do we understand where you are beyond just asking you that question on that survey. So there was a study done. I don't know if anyone's heard of Section AI, but if not, definitely check it out. They did a study in June this year, and where they surveyed several different organizations. And here's some of their findings, which I thought were really interesting around adoption. So usage metrics are what we see above the surface, but what really matter are how people are adopting technology and fitting it into their everyday workflow. And do they believe in it? Do they actually think it's helping them? And so what they found, which I thought was really important to understand, is only 10% of the workforce is considered truly proficient. And we'll get into like, what does proficiency actually mean? And what does it mean to you? And I always say proficiency is personal. Where I am in my journey and how I believe I am adopting technology or using it to its best value and ability, and my own ability is different than you, right? So we have to meet people where they are, and we'll talk about that as well. Many people overestimate their skills. And I think this is true across a lot of things, not just technology. But they found in this study, interestingly, that when they did some level of testing and different questions, what people said they were as far as a level, whether they thought they were intermediate or better, they actually were more at the novice level when they were asked detailed questions that evaluated their actual skill. So I thought that was really interesting, because people sort of promote themselves and their confidence level as being much more advanced in terms of proficiency than they indeed are, which is also a danger, right? Because it means dangerous that you think you know more than you do. Therefore, you're probably not using it both appropriately, right? We can get into the whole security mix of that, but also you're overly confident, which means you're kind of missing things because you're not necessarily investing the time in learning because you think you've already learned it. So again, there's some pitfalls around that. Some barriers that they identified through this, which I don't think are very surprising, but we should talk through them. Access. Not everybody has universal access. In fact, across the study, they only found that 23% of the people that they surveyed had universal access. And what does that mean? It means that they don't have access to the tools in their organization, or they don't even feel like they have them on their own personal access. So that's important, because if you don't have the ability to look at the tools, experience the tools, and immerse yourself in them daily, you're not going to be able to reach a level of proficiency and adoption. Training tended to be reserved for leaders. And then what really is interesting is 39% of managers, so those leaders, discouraged or even ignored the need to support people in leveling up in AI proficiency. So when you couple those two things together, that's really unfortunate, right? So like access and training is reserved for a small portion, typically leadership, but leadership are the same that were acknowledging, I mean, 39% is not small, right? 39% of them were discouraging or ignoring anyone else getting access, training, education. And then again, this one is, I think, pretty universal. People are worried they will be seen as cheating by using these results. There was a story recently, I was talking to a leader in the product management space, and he has several business analysts and product owners that work across his team. And so he had asked one of his colleagues or members of his team to do some research, which she did, and she did the research. And so when she conveyed her results back to him, it was clear, he could tell that she had used AI to do the research, which, by the way, is a smart way to use AI. The challenge was when he asked her specific questions to defend or validate some of her research, she couldn't. And so there is a danger of people not leveraging it as a tool to help them, but to sort of like replace work that they would have done otherwise, and therefore not adding insights into it. And I think that's what I always, lean into that word is, you're not cheating if you're leveraging it to do your work faster, but you're still applying the insights. You're learning from it. Again, it goes back to like leveraging it for good and having confidence in it and fitting it into your workflow versus maybe what someone might refer to as sort of the lazy approach and not necessarily even understanding what was coming back to them. And I think that's an important part of proficiency as well. So AI tools and budgets are expanding, but proficiency is lagging, right? Which it was so interesting. Why is that? Why is that? And how can we combat it? So I have an argument that what we measure above the surface, I call them surface metrics, are things about access, right? They're things about are people engaging with the tools, right? So login counts, how many times did they click on something, pages. I talked to several product leaders where they're implementing tools like Pendo, for example, or other tools that sort of instrument and monitor usage. Those are very important. I'm not dismissing usage metrics, but usage metrics alone do not reveal understanding or impact. Strategic signals like confidence and workflow diagnostics provide a clearer picture of integration. And when I say integration, I don't mean technology systems talking to each other. I mean integration into your daily workflow, into what a human is doing. So imagine that you're leading a team with only login data, all of these surface metrics, and it's like driving through the fog with a cluttered dashboard, right? Like it's not really clear. There's no clarity there. How do I know if people are confident? How do I know if they're growing in literacy or if they're getting task-specific proficiency in their jobs? Like that's clarity. And those are the real signals you get from real people, like working with them. How do you know that they're fluent in their role? Because the role and how they use technology and AI is different from management than it is from a business analyst. And if the access and the leadership are who's getting trained, but they're ignoring or not supporting those individuals and individual contributors on the team, then obviously there's going to be a gap in fluency. So I think it's important to understand what we measure matters and how we measure matters. So there are several models out there today, some of which you may have already heard of. There's an AI literacy scale called, for short, MAILS, Meta AI Literacy Scale. And this is really focused, it's very much in education and higher education around students, but also professionals have used this, and it's great to understand workforce development, research and education, sort of the psychology and individual literacy for AI. There's also MIT has one called Impact AI that's around youth empowerment through AI. There's UNESCO has an AI competency, which is around global fluency and lifelong learning. Again, very education based to understand, apply, and create based on how they develop curriculum and professional development. We have one at Benson Consulting called AIM, where we run proficiency pulses, and you'll see an example of one that we did recently as well. And it's really around org readiness and individual readiness and transformation, focus for stakeholders and tech adopters, so that we take pulses to understand strategic signals, again, not surface metrics, that really lean into things like change management and adoption strategy. So there's the difference between like what metrics we see every day, which are very common, and strategic signals. And so where does this show up in how we work? And what does it look like? So I'm sort of painting a picture here around 3 different phases of how you could integrate AI. And again, this talk is focused around AI, but really it's any technology, right? And fluency isn't just about technology skills or your skills leveraging that technology. It's about making it part of your natural day. It's part of your everyday work. And this visual maps to how someone goes from like occasional use over here on the left, right? Like, oh, I'm going to experiment with something. I have a quick question. I'm going to ask ChatGPT or my Copilot. I need to solve this problem or analyze these results that are like a bunch of data. And it's such a great use case, right? To analyze a lot of data very quickly and summarize things and get insights quickly and understand those and apply them to your use case. And that's sort of like these one-off reaching out for help to the tool. And that's like I call occasional use. And then as we move all the way to the right, you almost see AI disappear, right? So you don't necessarily see it as prominent in the first because it's like one-offs. And then when you go all the way to the right, you're looking at, okay, this is like full integration. And again, when I'm saying integration in these terms, even though I'm a technologist, I'm not talking in terms of technology integrating with technology. I'm talking about human integration with AI. And this is when AI becomes a tool for empowerment and achievement, right? It's like almost like an appendage. So you can see in this, it's just part of what we do. It's how we work. And then in the middle, it's like used as sort of orchestrating things, where it's like you're kind of in the middle there. And I've had people say, well, where do you think you are, Melissa? And I'm like, I think right now I'm probably in the middle or are trending towards the middle, but it's changing so fast. I wonder if we'll ever actually get to the right, like, because I think we will with some, but there'll be new emerging AI technologies, emerging AI companies. I was just talking with someone yesterday that's launching an initiative here in the state of New Hampshire, AI in New Hampshire. And one of the topics that we were really focused on was, how do you handle adopting technology in the space that's moving so fast and getting proficient in it when some companies are only lasting a quarter and they're going under, or they're shifting focus entirely because the technology is changing so fast. So it's really interesting to think about what was legacy, at least for me, last 20 years, is legacy is becoming quicker, if that makes sense. Like we're actually moving on to bigger and better things much faster than we ever have in this space. And I think AI is enabling that, but it also is challenging to be like, well, how can we ever fully integrate? So consider, when you think about this, what it would take for AI to become a seamless part of your daily routine and empower you to achieve your goals every day as part of your job. And the difference between AI usage as activity and AI fluency as confidence and consistency. So that's really what I want you to take away from AI integration and how we integrate it into how we work. So I want to dive deeper into proficiency, but I'd love to hear from those of you that are with us right now. Again, if you can participate in the slide, that'd be great. What does AI proficiency mean to you? Just one word, like what does it mean? I think I've found that it means very different things to different people. And again, it's somewhat personal. A lot of it, from my perspective, is confidence in how you're able to leverage it in your daily workflow and really understanding how is it providing value to you. Again, getting back to like, what is the true business value of AI or any technology? It's how is it helping you in your work? How does it make you move faster? Like efficiency is a big thing that I've heard a lot about too, right? I think that especially in the healthcare industry, one of the things that AI is really helping doctors with is that efficiency. Like how can they spend more time with their patients instead of entering, electronic medical records at the end of every day and having like literally all the paperwork that they have to do? How can AI help them do that? And I think that's how do they become proficient in that technology when a doctor isn't necessarily setting out to be proficient in technology. But yeah, speed, that's a huge one, and certainly something that I believe in wholeheartedly. So how do we define proficiency? along sort of our proficiency journey and our framework. So I mentioned that we look at this, and we'll get into an example about how do we measure these signals and meeting people where they are. So to do that, you have to have a scale, right? And so we've done is define that scale in 4 stages. And these stages are what you can see here on the proficiency journey. And again, I'm speaking about AI, but honestly, this maps to any sort of technology adoption, and we've proven that. In the space of AI, we have what I would say the foundational stage, which is aligned, and that's saying I understand where AI fits. Like in terms of my proficiency level, I get it. I get where you could leverage AI, and think about that in, the integration slide that I just showed. That's somebody that's somewhat on the one-offs, the occasional use. Yes, I understand it, or I've played around with it. I've definitely used ChatGPT. Like I hear that a lot of people are definitely there, right? And so they're at the base, they're at the aligned stage. Then we move up in the journey and we move forward to engaged. And this is like, I use AI when prompted or shown. So now I'm engaged, I'm using it more, and maybe I'm moving into a more frequent of my occasional use to solve specific problems. And again, it's usually if someone asks me something, or they say, well, did you use Try Copilot, or did you ask ChatGPT? Then yes, I will do that. And that's what we're saying as like the engaged phase. And then as we continue to move into the journey, we get to embedded. And embedded is where I'm reaching for it naturally in my workflow. Like I couldn't imagine it not being part of my everyday. And I don't do things without leveraging it somehow. Maybe I'm using it to fully automate workflows for me, right? And summarize my day ahead, and, telling me the most important things I should focus on today by evaluating things and summarizing large documents that I have to review. And I'm just constantly using it for all sorts of use cases. That's embedded. And then the highest point in this journey, and where we would love everybody to get to, is evangelized. And that's really exciting because it's how you help other people discover, right? So now you've become a true evangelist where you're teaching others, and it's not just a go-to tool for you, but you have advocacy and you're mentoring others, you're sharing use cases and success stories with each other, you're encouraging adoption, and you have high confidence and contextual leadership. And that's really important. What we see when we work with organizations is that not everyone will get to the evangelized stage, but when you have a good percentage that are there, amazing things happen, right? We often refer to even some of those people in the context of change management as change champions, because they're so excited about the success they've seen and what it's done for them and the true business value that it's allowed both personally and across their team, that they can demonstrate that ROI with such excitement and confidence that it's almost infectious, right? And it's contagious, and other people really want to do it. So it inspires a lot of curiosity, and AI proficiency evolves through these stages. And again, each of these things have different and distinct signals and behaviors. So what do I mean? Again, I mean signals. I don't mean like Big Brother, like surveillance. I mentioned that what we have at Benson Consulting is something we call our way of measuring proficiency is called Name Proficiency Pulse. And so what we've done, here's an example of a client that we've worked with where we've run a pulse across all of the members of different teams, and we've been able to categorize their level of proficiency on the journey that I just shared with you across teams. And I'll tell you, this really literally lit up a lot of insightful conversations and also plans for how can we reach people where they are. And you can see there's quite a lot of colors going on here, but even in the same team, there are sometimes a divide. So in some cases, remember we have aligned, engaged, embedded. The first thing that you'll probably notice, there's nobody evangelized, right? Nobody's reached that stage. It's early in their adoption of this particular technology. And so they've sort of had a false start here and there, a rollout without like an official adoption strategy. And this is very common. We see this across a lot of organizations where adoption is a bit scattered, fragmented, even within a single team. You can see one team here has anyone that's from aligned to embedded. Well, that's quite a difference, right? So why is that? And we'll talk a little bit about different people and how they learn, but the most important part of this is that these are the signals that I was talking about. This isn't about tracking logins. right? There's nothing about what they clicked on here. This was us researching and reaching out into individuals, much like Section AI did in their June 2025 report that we just walked through, and really understanding what people are doing. What are they doing? What are they using? What is their, also, by the way, what is their perception of their understanding? And then really testing them on the understanding to get a fair assessment of what their proficiency is, and not just, again, because remember 54% overstate where they are on their journey. So 54% may have told us that they were evangelized, that they were at that stage. And we found a fair amount of them were actually only at engaged, and nobody was evangelized, right? But we used the analysis from our pulse to create a proficiency index, which is what's mapped here across all of these teams. And again, these are signals. So it reveals patterns of that integration, like where is it in their daily workflow or not. It reveals patterns of confidence and advocacy across teams, right? So if you have someone that's at the embedded stage, but then there's others that are only at aligned, then you're like, I want to dive deeper into these results, because we may already have a change champion here that can help us. And it's a lot easier to get embedded up to evangelized and then help, encourage the rest of the team in their learning. So I encourage you to think about your own team when you're looking at this, or your own organization across teams, and think about where do they stand in their journey, or even yourself, right? Like, where do you stand in your journey? And then what support do they need to get to the next level, right? So we see a lot of orange here that's aligned. In fact, two entire teams are. What do we need to do to bring them to engaged on the journey? And so that's what this allows. It allows us to build those plans. So now we can figure out how to support the team and who needs what support. And it's really important for us to understand the distribution of proficiency without having invasive tracking, so that, again, we're revealing where teams stand and we're guiding smarter enablement strategies. So how do we do that? So we take those signals that you just saw on that results from a client we recently have been working with, and you turn those into insights, right? And I just talked you through several of those insights. And this feedback loop starts with the signals like confidence scores, workflow diagnostics, this proficiency index. And those signals provide insights that inform enablement strategies, which then drive progress in AI proficiency. So we're not talking about like laborious long form surveys or crazy tests. We're just asking enough questions, and the right questions based on what you're trying to assess. And then we're using those to understand where people are. And then most importantly, we're taking that insight again and creating enablement strategies so that it's very clear how we can take that and turn it into action. We're big fans here around taking insights and turning them into action, so that we can always make the level of action meet the level of conversation about things. A tech adoption is no different. And so a practical framework of a feedback loop like this, it seems really simplistic, but it's crucial and important. Again, like, identify the signals that you want to test for, leverage a framework, whether that's what we've done here or one of the other literacy scales, see where the signals are, gather those insights and understand who is where, and then define your enablement strategy. Because doing it in any other order isn't going to really provide the progress. And then by the way, this is a loop, meaning it's not a linear path. You notice I didn't have like start step 1, end step 8. This is cyclical. It's a continuous loop. Why? Well, I just told you AI is moving faster than any technology in my career. So of course you have to keep assessing, right? Things change. You need to make sure, and even if it's not AI, any technology solution that you're using, unless that company, the vendor, has gone out of business, they are adding features to their products. I've been in the product space for a very long time. I promise they're adding features. They have a roadmap, and they are incented to deliver new releases, sometimes quarterly, right? At least yearly. They want you to adopt that, right? They don't want you to churn. They want you to adopt that. But if you don't do this within your organization, how will you know if you're adopting those new features? Because you're definitely paying for them. So again, it's like, how do we get true business value? The business value comes from not just usage, but actual integration and adoption, like getting people to those different levels of the proficiency journey, that they're actually building it into their daily workflow, and it's changing the way that they do their jobs, which is having a true business impact for you. So what gets in the way of this? So many things, some of which we already talked about because they were in that lovely study that Section AI did. So One is fear. I think it goes without question that people are fearful of new technology. AI is definitely emerging and causing some people to take that fear and somewhat disengage. Like I'll just wait and see how this plays out. I'm not going to engage now. But that's a very common barrier for like effective AI adoption. Like I don't want to deal with it. It's going to take my job. But I think that's the opportunity, right? So the opportunity is to address those fears. Unclear use cases. This one is really, really common. If you're trying to adopt, again, AI or any technology, and you do not understand the use cases that you're adopting it for, and it's not clear, it likely will not be leveraged the way you expected, and the results will be dismal, if any results at all, and therefore people will stop using it. That's what I see. They disengage, they stop using it, and then your investment is very much wasted. So it not only hasn't improved anything on your organization and you haven't seen ROI, but you've literally seen a loss. It's a huge sunk cost to spend the money to onboard people, even the money for training. And then it was all without the right strategic plan and enablement strategy that really met people at their role and their use cases. So that's a big one. And then this is interesting, is relying too heavily on power users. And we as technologists, we love power users. We love them. But the true story is and we've seen this as well, if you put too much weight on those power users, and sometimes power users get misinterpreted as change champions, which is not always the same thing, by the way. Power users love tech, right? And they just sort of throw themselves in. But the truth is, it doesn't tell the full story of adoption across your organization. And most people aren't actually trying to master AI. That's the majority of people are not. Most people are trying to just make it work for their actual jobs. They're like, okay, here's a new thing. I'm trying to adopt it. How can I actually use it to do my work? So again, quick pulses helps teams spot this gap, because it elevates voices beyond what I call the tech trailblazers, right? Those really they love digging in and trying something new. And it brings attention to those that are quietly struggling or cautiously exploring. Maybe they're not struggling, but they're not like the power users. But you still need to be able to pay attention to them. I think for us, from a technology perspective, it's a lot more fun to work with the power users because they're so excited about it, and they don't propose as much of a challenge. But where you get the true value is to try to move people up the proficiency journey, right? And those are the people that are, again, quietly struggling or just cautiously exploring. So again, identifying those common barriers and really understanding them is going to allow you to have broader adoption and more focused adoption. So you're actually going to be able to demonstrate actual business value. So what we see smart teams do differently, and if you're not doing this, it doesn't mean you're not smart. Just saying that what we see people doing that we think is very smart is tailoring the adoption to role-based needs. Again, this goes back to having clear use cases, right? And strategic adoption isn't just about size, it's about design. So teams that are doing it well aren't just working harder, they are working smarter. Again, that's why I'm saying smart teams. So they use these role-based templates to tailor the AI adoption to the specific people's needs so that it's use case based and not all the bells and whistles that are available that this person might never use in their role. And they may be interesting, but let's face it, things that are interesting in technology, but if they're not relevant to us, we don't become proficient, we don't have any usage, and we certainly do not integrate them in our daily workflow. So understanding that person and how they work, and then tailoring adoption strategies to that, again, we see this all the time. It just works so much better and faster, honestly. To speak to speed being your measure of proficiency, if you meet people where they are and the jobs they're doing, they will adopt it faster because they'll see the success so much faster, and that just creates more momentum and motivation. And we see them leveraging peer champions to drive that engagement. And I talked about change champions, peer champions, no different. Again, don't confuse that with your power user. They may not be the same people. And those people drive engagement and really, again, it's about celebrating the things that they're able to do and them having excitement about being able to do those things. That creates that curiosity and motivation across the team that really spurs on other people. And then support too, being supported by a peer versus a leader is a very different thing. across all sorts of education and learning, but especially with technology that can be somewhat intimidating. Having someone that maybe is in the same role as you, but has adopted it a little bit more or different, it's really helpful because you can see yourself in them. So you're able to relate better. And when we relate to other people, we learn easier. It's just a fact of human nature. And identifying and addressing those barriers that we just talked about, leveraging light touch diagnostics, like pulses, like using literacy scales, but some way to get in touch with people and identify and address where the barriers are. Otherwise, they're silent and you don't see them. So I really recommend that you think about which of these strategies, maybe all of them, or at least one, that you could take back to your organization today and adopt immediately. And some of these don't require like large investments, right? It's really just thinking a bit differently or identifying people in your organization. And again, if you're want to understand more about frameworks and how to do that, we're also really happy to talk more about it. But again, smart teams focus on design using role-based templates, peer champions, and really understanding, again, like not deep integrated theses or tests, but like light touch diagnostics. Like, how can you get the information you need? There's been a big focus around pushing a mandate. We've seen this both from like boards in some worlds and level of organizations, whether that's healthcare or nonprofit. Also just from like the CEO level, just saying like, you have to use AI, somehow incorporate it without really a clear path or strategy. And I think we talked about that a lot. Like that's a pretty clear prescription for failure if you don't apply it to something that actually is going to be leveraged to create value. So what we would love to see you do is, instead of asking, are we using AI, start asking, are we getting better because of it? Because now the question shifts, right? Because usage, again, that's right back to those surface metrics that really are like looking through a foggy windshield, not knowing where we're going and how will I know if I get there because I can't really see very clearly, versus strategic signals. Are we seeing things improve? What's important to you? How should we measure that? Like, that's what we need to do. Couple the AI to contributing to your team's outcomes. Like, are things improving? Is it efficiency? Is it effectiveness? Is it cost? Like, what are the decisions that your teams are making? And how does AI help lead to measurable improvements in those spaces? And I think that's the key. The goal isn't just to use AI. The goal is to be able to achieve better decisions, smoother workflows, stronger outcomes, speed, like all of the things that we know are the benefits. But when we just say, are we using it? What does that actually mean? And I've heard a lot of that out there. So I think let's reframe the mandate. Are we getting better because of AI? That's what we would like to see you asking. So AI doesn't deliver value on its own. I hate to break it to everyone, but it's because of the people that are creating it, for sure, right? But people that are leveraging it. It's their curiosity, their confidence, and their creativity that actually transforms the potential of this amazing technology advancement in our world into progress. So we've equipped teams with tools, right? I mean, in some cases, I guess, that report from Section AI says that, 23% have access, and it's mostly at management. So we can do a better job even equipping teams with tools and making sure there's universal access. But we also need to invest in unlocking the talent that makes transformation possible, which is very different than just the one-stop training that might come from the vendor, or just dropping it off and never asking, has it improved anything? Is it making your life better? How are you finding yourself using it? Do you feel any level of proficiency or advancement? What is your confidence? That's why those pulses are so important, right? Like, you can't unlock transformation if you don't understand how things are happening. So think about how you can support your team's growth in AI proficiency. What steps can you take away today to unlock their potential? And I encourage you all, like, invest in the people as the key to AI success, not just in the technology. AI's value comes from the people, again, like their curiosity, their confidence, their creativity. That is what transforms potential into progress.